Most men ruin attraction without even knowing it. Not with a mistake, but with a single word, a name, a nickname that kills desire instantly because it sounds cheap, predictable, recycled. But there are 5 forbidden nicknames that flip this entire dynamic. The ones that don't just get her attention, they rewire it. You're about to hear the nicknames that hit a woman's emotional operating system so deeply she starts thinking about you non-stop. But you must use them sparingly or they lose their power. Before I reveal them, understand this. A nickname is not a label, it's a signal. It communicates where she stands in your world. Most guys use baby, sweetie, and cutie, thinking it's romantic. It's not. It's outdated software. What truly works are nicknames built on exclusivity, mystery, and emotional precision. The kind that makes her wonder, why does this hit so different? Stay with me, because one wrong nickname makes you forgettable, but the right one makes you unforgettable. Nicknames trigger emotional imprinting because they bypass the logical mind and land directly in the emotional center of the brain, the part responsible for memory, bonding, and attachment. When you use a nickname that feels intentional, rare, or uniquely tied to her, it becomes more than just a word. It becomes a psychological anchor. Humans don't remember faces or conversations nearly as clearly as they remember how someone made them feel. And a nickname is one of the fastest ways to create a feeling that stands out from the noise of her everyday life. Think about how children imprint on certain phrases, or how couples remember the very first inside joke they ever shared. Those moments stay alive for years because the brain files them differently, storing them under emotional experiences rather than random interactions. A nickname works the same way. It tells her that you see something in her that nobody else sees, and that single perception becomes powerful fuel for attraction. A nickname is basically emotional branding. Every time she hears it, her brain automatically retrieves the emotional state connected to it. If the nickname makes her feel special, chosen, protected, playful, or desired, she won't just like the word, she'll crave the feeling attached to it. That is emotional imprinting. The word becomes a trigger, and you become the source. This is why some nicknames feel addictive without people understanding why. The mind treats them as emotional shortcuts. Instead of processing an entire memory, it just processes the emotional highlight of that memory and links it to the person who created it. When you use a forbidden nickname the right way, you're anchoring an emotional state to yourself, and that emotional state becomes a loop she returns to every time the nickname appears in her mind. The nickname also creates a form of micro-intimacy. It's a language you share that nobody else is part of. Exclusivity is one of the strongest psychological forces in attraction because it signals that you belong to a world together that others are not invited into. When she feels that kind of exclusivity, it increases the emotional intensity she associates with you. Humans love stories and feel drawn to anything that feels like a chapter in a personal story. A nickname becomes a chapter title. It becomes the label of a moment, a memory, a mood, or a connection point that only exists between you and her. This is especially powerful with women because they tend to process relational cues with higher emotional sensitivity. So when a man gives her a nickname that feels crafted just for her, she doesn't just hear it, she feels it at a cellular level. Another reason nicknames trigger emotional imprinting is because of repetition. Every time the nickname is used, it reinforces the emotional meaning behind it. But here's the twist most men don't understand. Repetition only works when it's limited. If you use a nickname too much, it loses its emotional weight. and becomes white noise. But when you use it strategically, almost sparingly, it stays charged with emotional voltage. It becomes something she leans in for, looks forward to, and internally reacts to. Scarcity amplifies impact. If something is rare, the mind automatically treats it as valuable. So when she hears the nickname, even if it's a simple word, it feels like an event. Nicknames also influence the dynamic between you. They shift energy. They create polarity. If you choose a nickname that frames her as something intriguing, impressive, enigmatic, or deeply connected to you, she starts responding to that frame. People usually rise to the identity they believe someone else sees in them. So if your nickname hints at confidence, elegance, fire, softness, or mystery inside her, she begins to embody that quality more when she interacts with you. That means the nickname acts as both a mirror and a magnet. It reflects something she wants to be, and it draws her closer to the person who sees her that way. In the end, the nickname succeeds because it makes her feel something she doesn't feel from other men. That emotional distinction is the real source of obsession because people chase the experiences they can't get anywhere else. When you understand that the right nickname creates subconscious attachment, you start to realize that attraction isn't built on the big dramatic moments people usually imagine. It's built on subtle, repeated emotional cues that slip beneath awareness and start shaping how someone feels about you without them ever noticing the shift. A nickname is one of the most effective tools for creating this subconscious attachment because it operates beneath the surface of logic. She doesn't analyze why it feels good or why it stands out or why she replays it in her mind later. The nickname becomes a quiet echo that keeps pulling her attention back to you, and the more emotionally aligned it is with how she wants to feel, the stronger the attachment becomes. A subconscious attachment forms when the brain links a specific person to a specific emotional reward, and nicknames act like emotional shortcuts. The mind loves shortcuts because it wants to save energy. So when a nickname consistently gives her a microdose of validation, warmth, intimacy, or curiosity, her brain starts predicting that emotional reward when she thinks of you. That prediction creates desire because the brain begins to crave the positive emotional state it expects from you. Once that loop forms, the attachment grows even when you're not present, even when you're not talking, even when she's trying to distract herself with something else. That's the power of subconscious programming. It works in the background, quietly reinforcing the connection without requiring effort from either of you. The nickname also bypasses resistance. Even when a woman tries to stay emotionally neutral or detached, the right nickname lowers her guard because it feels natural rather than confrontational. It doesn't demand anything. It doesn't push for commitment. It doesn't ask her to make a decision. It simply creates a feeling. Feelings slip through defenses more easily than logic does, and the nickname becomes a doorway. Every time she hears it in your voice or sees it in your text, it creates a micro moment of familiarity and emotional relevance. Humans bond through familiarity. When something feels familiar, it feels safe, and when it feels safe, it feels desirable. This is how a nickname evolves from a simple word into an emotional tether. Subconscious attachment also forms through contrast. She may hear generic nicknames from other people, but when your nickname stands out, either through its uniqueness, its timing, or the emotional meaning behind it, her mind labels it as different. The brain pays much more attention to things that feel different from the ordinary. This contrast gives the nickname psychological weight. It becomes a tiny symbol of the emotional space she enters when she talks to you. And symbols are powerful because they encapsulate entire emotional experiences in one small package. The nickname becomes a symbol of how she feels with you, and that symbolic meaning becomes addictive because it represents something personal, specific, and emotionally charged. Another layer of subconscious attachment comes from anticipation. When a nickname is used sparingly and precisely, she begins to anticipate it. Anticipation creates dopamine, and dopamine is the neurotransmitter responsible for craving. It's not the reward itself that creates obsession. It's the anticipation of the reward. That means the nickname doesn't just affect her when you say it, it affects her when she wonders when you'll say it again. It creates a micro tension, a small internal longing, and that longing turns into emotional pull. She starts thinking about the nickname even when you're silent, and when silence makes her think of you, that's when subconscious attachment is fully formed. Nicknames also shape identity. If the nickname reflects a quality she values in herself or wishes to see in herself, she becomes emotionally tied to the person who brings that identity out. People subconsciously attach to those who reflect the version of themselves they want to be. So when your nickname highlights something elegant, powerful, soft, mysterious, or uniquely hers, she subconsciously bonds with you because you represent the emotional experience of becoming that version of herself. This is why nicknames feel personal, even if they're simple. They're not about the word, they're about the identity the word awakens inside her. Ultimately, the right nickname attaches itself to her emotional patterns, not her logical thinking. And emotional patterns are the hardest to break. That's why a nickname can make her think of you, miss you, crave you, and feel drawn to you even when she tries not to. It becomes a psychological fingerprint, something she can't unhear, can't forget, and can't disconnect from because it lives in the places of her mind that she doesn't control consciously. Women respond to names that feel exclusive because exclusivity taps directly into the emotional mechanisms that drive connection, desire, and long-term interest. When something feels exclusive, it feels chosen. And when a woman feels chosen by a specific man, it activates a deeper level of emotional investment. A nickname becomes exclusive not because it's rare in the world, but because it's rare in her world. It signals that there's something about her that stands apart from everyone else you interact with. Women are highly sensitive to emotional hierarchy. They pay attention to how a man categorizes them in his mind. When a nickname is reserved only for her, it quietly communicates that she occupies a category others don't, and that emotional ranking is the beginning of attraction intensifying into obsession. Exclusive nicknames also activate a feeling of belonging. Human beings crave belonging, but women especially crave a sense of this is just between us. A nickname that only you use creates a psychological pocket, a private corner of emotional space that feels intimate and protected. She doesn't have to share it. She doesn't have to compete for it. She doesn't have to compare it. It belongs entirely to her. That ownership is powerful. It forms a bond because she begins to associate the nickname with moments of closeness, attention, and significance. And anytime a woman starts to associate significance with your presence, the emotional stakes rise dramatically. Exclusivity also heightens curiosity. When you call her something that no one else calls her, she naturally begins to wonder why. Curiosity is one of the strongest forms of emotional momentum. Once curiosity starts, it continues building on its own. She'll replay the moment you used the nickname. She'll analyze your tone. She'll think about the context. She'll wonder what you see in her that inspired the nickname. She may not ask out loud, but the question will echo internally. That internal questioning is a form of mental engagement, and mental engagement is the foundation of obsession. The more she thinks about your intention, the more emotionally entwined she becomes without even realizing it. Exclusive nicknames also work because they feel like progression. When you give her a nickname that nobody else receives, it signals that your connection is evolving. It tells her that she has moved from the general category of everyone into a more selective emotional tier. Women are extremely aware of indicators of progress. They need to feel movement, forward motion, growth in the dynamic. A nickname becomes a milestone. It's small but emotionally significant. It shows her that something between you has shifted, and that shift gives her something to invest in emotionally. Emotional investment always creates deeper attachment because the mind automatically protects and values what it invests in. Another important aspect of exclusivity is emotional safety. When a woman feels exclusive to a man in some subtle way, she feels more comfortable expressing softer, more vulnerable parts of herself. A nickname that feels uniquely hers becomes a permission slip for emotional openness. It's like a signal that she can relax into the moment with you because the connection has its own private channel. That emotional channel becomes a safe place where she feels seen without being judged. When a woman feels seen safely, she forms powerful emotional bonds. A nickname becomes the doorway to that feeling because it symbolizes the personalized attention you give her. Exclusive nicknames also separate you from every other man in her life. Most men treat women generically. They use the same compliments, the same jokes, the same flirty lines. But when your nickname for her is exclusive, she can't compare you to anyone else because nobody else mirrors your interaction style. You become distinct in her emotional landscape. Distinction is the source of attraction in a world full of similarity. She starts noticing differences in how she talks to you, how she responds to your messages, how she feels when she sees your name on her screen. That subtle difference becomes emotional leverage, slowly anchoring you deeper in her internal world. The final reason exclusivity works so powerfully is because it makes her feel irreplaceable. When a nickname belongs only to her, it tells her she isn't interchangeable. She's not one of many. She's one of one. And every woman desires that feeling on some level. When a nickname makes her feel unique, valued, and emotionally prioritized, she doesn't just respond to the word. She responds to the identity the word gives her. That identity pulls her closer, binds her attention, and makes her experience you in a way she can't experience with anyone else. Forbidden nicknames work because they aren't generic. And that single fact changes everything about how a woman emotionally receives them. Generic nicknames belong to the public. They're worn out, recycled, predictable, and emotionally bland. When a man calls a woman baby, sweetheart, or cutie, she doesn't feel special because she knows thousands of other men use the same words on thousands of other women. Generic nicknames carry no personal meaning, no emotional depth, and no uniqueness. They're mass-produced labels. They don't make her pause, think, or feel. But forbidden nicknames operate on the opposite end of the spectrum. They feel personal, intentional, precise, and rare. They stand out in her emotional memory instead of blending into the background noise of everyday interactions. That feeling of difference is what makes them potent. A forbidden nickname bypasses the conscious filters that women use to judge men's intentions. She's used to hearing predictable lines and common compliments, so her brain automatically categorizes them as low value signals. But when you use a nickname that breaks the pattern, she can't easily categorize it, and that triggers curiosity. Curiosity is emotional oxygen. The moment she becomes curious, she becomes engaged. And engagement is where attraction begins. Her mind starts analyzing the nickname, trying to understand the meaning behind it, the reason you chose it, the version of her you're seeing that others don't. Even if she doesn't show it externally, internally, she is decoding your intention. That decoding process creates mental intimacy because the mind naturally bonds with anything it spends time analyzing. Forbidden nicknames also feel more exclusive because they're not meant for everyone. They're not cute fillers. They're not basic comfort terms. They have personality. They reflect something specific: her energy, her vibe, her presence. Women crave specific attention. They want to feel seen in a way that only one man sees them. When your nickname captures something unique about her, even if it's subtle, it instantly elevates you above the men who only give her generic validation. Specificity is the emotional currency of attraction. It proves you're paying attention. And that attention feels addictive because it strokes a deeper psychological need for recognition. Another reason forbidden nicknames work is because they create polarity. Polarity is the tension between masculine presence and feminine energy. When a nickname hints at confidence, authority, mischief, admiration, or warmth, it shifts the emotional power dynamic in your favor. Most men are too afraid to stand out, so they use safe nicknames. But safe nicknames don't build attraction. They build neutrality. Forbidden nicknames carry an emotional charge because they're bold enough to express something real without being aggressive or needy. They create an emotional spark, a subtle jolt that makes her feel more alive in the interaction. That spark becomes her mental association with you, and once she ties that feeling to your presence, you gain emotional gravity. Forbidden nicknames also activate identity level attraction. Every woman has a version of herself she wants to be seen as: playful, elegant, mysterious, powerful, soft, confident, or deeply feminine. A forbidden nickname hints at that version of her. It reflects the persona she wants to embody. When a nickname upports her desired identity, she becomes attached to the person who gives her that identity. This is subtle but extremely powerful. People are drawn to those who make them feel like the best version of themselves. A forbidden nickname becomes the mirror that reflects her ideal self back to her, and that creates an emotional dependency because she subconsciously associates your presence with that elevated identity. Another key reason forbidden nicknames work is timing. You don't use them too early, too often, or too casually. They're introduced at moments where emotional tension is already present. That timing creates an imprint. She remembers the moment you said it because it felt charged. Forbidden nicknames thrive. On contrast, the contrast between normal conversation and a sudden moment of deeper emotional precision. That contrast creates memorability. She doesn't just hear the nickname, she experiences it, and experiences get stored in emotional memory far more strongly than simple words. Finally, forbidden nicknames work because they carry mystery. A nickname that is slightly unconventional, slightly bold, or slightly deeper than expected makes her wonder about you. Wondering is the seed of obsession. When she wonders what you mean, why you chose that name, what it reveals about how you see her, the emotional loop begins. Once she enters that loop, the nickname becomes a trigger for curiosity, connection, and desire, and that's what makes it unforgettable. Tone and timing matter more than the nickname itself because the emotional delivery determines how her brain interprets the meaning behind the word. Two men could use the same nickname, yet one will create instant attraction while the other triggers discomfort or indifference. This happens because women don't react primarily to the word, they react to the energy behind it, the way it's delivered, and when it's delivered. A nickname said at the wrong moment loses impact. A nickname said with the wrong tone loses warmth, confidence, and magnetism. The human brain is wired to read subtext, and women especially are highly attuned to microsignals. When your tone conveys confidence, presence, or subtle affection, she feels it emotionally before she interprets it logically. Her heart reacts first, her mind follows later. That is the essence of why tone carries more weight than vocabulary. Timing shapes emotion because emotional states fluctuate. A nickname used when she's distracted, stressed, irritated, or disconnected won't land, but the same nickname used when she's open, playful, curious, or engaged becomes powerful. Timing is emotional alignment. When your nickname aligns with her internal state, it amplifies that state and anchors it to you. It becomes part of the emotional moment you're sharing. And shared emotional moments create bonding. When timing is off, the nickname floats in the air with no anchor. When timing is right, the nickname sinks directly into her emotional memory. She doesn't just hear it, she feels chosen in that exact moment. That feeling becomes a psychological imprint she returns to later without understanding why. Tone also signals intention. If the tone is soft, warm, playful, confident, teasing, or steady, it communicates your emotional framing. Women notice tone far more than men do. A single word spoken with a steady, composed tone can make her feel safe. The same word spoken with a relaxed, playful tone can make her feel excited. The nickname's power comes from the emotional atmosphere your tone creates. A weak tone signals uncertainty. A rushed tone signals nervousness. A dry tone signals detachment. But a tone delivered with quiet certainty creates a gravitational pull. You don't need to force dominance or arrogance. You simply project calm assurance, and that makes the nickname land with far greater impact. She registers the emotional vibration before she registers the meaning. Timing also communicates control. When you introduce a nickname slowly, naturally, and at the right moment, you show social intelligence and emotional awareness. Women find emotional awareness deeply attractive because it signals maturity and confidence. A man who throws nicknames around too early, ooks inexperienced. A man who waits for connection, for rapport, for that small spark in the conversation, he shows restraint. Restraint is magnetic. It signals abundance. It signals you don't need to rush. You don't need to prove anything. When you finally use the nickname, it feels earned. It feels organic. It feels intentional. That intentionality gives the nickname weight. She feels the shift, even if it's subtle. Tone and timing also shape how safe she feels with you. Emotional safety is a major factor in attraction. A nickname delivered too aggressively or too intimately too soon can make her feel pressured. But a nickname delivered with a tone that is inviting, steady, and non-invasive allows her to relax into the moment. Relaxation opens the door for emotional connection. When she feels emotionally safe, her guard lowers and she becomes more receptive to intimacy in all forms: verbal, energetic, emotional. A nickname then becomes a soft bridge between you instead of a risky leap. That bridge is what builds connection without resistance. Another subtle aspect is rhythm. The rhythm of when you speak her nickname influences how she internalizes it. When it appears unexpectedly in a moment of silence, it creates tension. When it appears softly at the end of a message, it creates warmth. When it appears during playful banter, it intensifies. Chemistry. Rhythm makes the nickname feel alive. It becomes part of the emotional choreography between you. And choreography is remembered long after the words fade. People forget sentences, but remember how someone made their heartbeat shift for a moment. Ultimately, tone and timing transform a simple nickname into an emotional experience. And emotional experiences are what she revisits in her mind when she's alone, when she's thinking about you, when she wonders why her feelings are growing. The nickname is just the delivery vehicle. Tone is the meaning. Timing is the impact. Together, they create the emotional signature that makes her drawn to you in a way she can't fully explain. Scarcity makes a nickname more powerful because the human mind naturally assigns value to things that are limited or rare. When a nickname is used sparingly, it immediately gains weight in her emotional perception. Overuse destroys impact. When a man calls a woman the same name too often, it blends into the background, becomes expected, and loses all emotional potency. Scarcity creates anticipation, and anticipation triggers dopamine, which is the neurotransmitter responsible for craving and desire. The brain begins to associate you with small doses of emotional reward that are rare and therefore highly prized. When she only hears the nickname in select moments, it doesn't just feel affectionate, it feels intentional, meaningful, and memorable. And memory strengthens obsession because it links you to specific emotional peaks. Scarcity also generates tension, and tension is the fuel of attraction. When a nickname appears occasionally, unpredictably, it keeps her on edge in a subtle, positive way. She begins to subconsciously search for it in interactions, whether through your texts, your tone of voice, or your behavior. That search is a mental loop that anchors attention on you. Human attention is highly selective. When something feels rare or elusive, it grabs attention far more efficiently than something abundant. A nickname delivered sparingly becomes a micro event she looks forward to experiencing. That micro event doesn't need drama or exaggeration. The emotional anticipation alone activates desire circuits in the brain, and desire circuits drive obsession without her conscious awareness. Another reason scarcity amplifies power is because it signals control and confidence. A man who reserves a nickname demonstrates that he doesn't need to overcompensate for attention. He doesn't throw words around to get her to like him. He doesn't mass produce affection, he gives it selectively. That selectivity creates hierarchy, even if it's subtle, because the mind interprets it as evidence of value. Women are wired to notice signals of confidence and emotional abundance. And when your nickname isn't always available, it communicates that you are emotionally self contained, emotionally strong, and discerning. That combination is magnetic because it activates the natural desire to seek connection with someone who represents emotional security and autonomy. Scarcity also enhances emotional imprinting. When a nickname is rare, it becomes tied to specific memorable moments rather than blending into generic interactions. Each time she hears it, her mind retrieves not just the word, but the context, the mood, and the feelings attached to previous uses. That reinforcement strengthens emotional loops, making the nickname a trigger for recall, nostalgia, and subtle longing. The rarer the nickname, the more it feels like an artifact of your attention, something uniquely hers. The mind treasures what it perceives as unique, personal, and valuable, and that treasure becomes inseparable from the person who gave it, intensifying attachment over time. Scarcity also feeds curiosity and imagination. If she only hears the nickname occasionally, she begins to wonder why it isn't used more often. She analyzes the timing, the inflection, and the context. That internal analysis engages her mind with you, creating mental interaction even when you're not present. Curiosity drives internal dialogue, which strengthens the emotional bond because she repeatedly thinks about the meaning of the nickname and what it implies about her importance to you. The psychological effect is subtle but powerful. She becomes invested in moments she anticipates rather than moments she passively receives. And anticipation is the backbone of emotional desire. Finally, scarcity preserves novelty, and novelty is a key component of emotional impact. The human brain habituates quickly to repeated stimuli, reducing emotional responses over time. A nickname that is overused becomes ordinary, predictable, and eventually forgettable. By limiting its usage, you maintain novelty and emotional freshness. Each time it appears, it carries the weight of a unique event. That uniqueness becomes part of her emotional landscape, a high point in her mental map of interactions with you. The combination of scarcity, anticipation, and selective timing ensures that the nickname doesn't just communicate affection or attention, it creates a psychological imprint that keeps her mentally and emotionally tethered to you, even when you are not physically present. Emotional personalization increases obsession because it taps directly into a woman's need to feel understood and seen on a level that most men never reach. A nickname that reflects her personality, quirks, or inner world communicates that you are paying attention to her as a unique individual rather than a generic presence in your life. Most men fail at this because they use mass produced or superficial terms that could apply to anyone. When a nickname is personalized, it signals that you notice the small details that define her identity. Women are wired to respond emotionally when someone acknowledges the subtle aspects of who they are. That acknowledgement creates intimacy instantly. And intimacy is one of the strongest drivers of emotional attachment. Personalization also triggers what psychologists call the mirror effect. When a nickname reflects something she values about herself or the version of herself she wants to embody, she subconsciously identifies with it. She starts to associate you with that identity because you are the one naming it and validating it. That association goes deeper than surface attraction. It becomes a form of emotional mapping. You are the source, the reference point, and the container of that experience. Every time she recalls the nickname, she recalls the feeling it evokes: playfulness, elegance, softness, power, or mystery. And those feelings become linked to you. That linkage is subtle but profound because the mind is wired to repeat patterns that deliver emotional rewards. Another factor is emotional exclusivity. A personalized nickname communicates that you recognize something in her that no one else sees. That creates a sense of privilege. She isn't just being noticed, she's being noticed in a way that is unique, special, and unavailable to others. That sense of exclusivity fuels desire because humans naturally seek what feels scarce and personal. It activates subconscious prioritization, making her mind involuntarily categorize you as someone emotionally significant in her life. The nickname becomes a mental bookmark, marking moments where she felt seen, understood, or valued by you. Those mental bookmarks accumulate into patterns of thought that keep her attention and emotional energy consistently directed toward you. Personalized nicknames also deepen emotional memory. Every interaction with the nickname reinforces its meaning. Unlike generic names that blend into conversation, a personalized nickname becomes a cue for recalling specific moments, tones, and moods. She doesn't just remember the word, she remembers how it felt to hear it from you in context. That contextual memory acts like an emotional hyperlink, connecting your presence to the experience of being recognized and understood. Over time, this builds a subconscious loop. The nickname triggers the feeling. The feeling triggers thoughts of you, and the thoughts of you reinforce attachment. Timing and subtlety amplify personalization even further. A nickname used too often or too aggressively can feel forced or insincere, breaking the emotional effect. But when it is delivered naturally, at a moment that aligns with her emotional state, it feels intentional, meaningful, and almost serendipitous. That sense of intentionality signals emotional intelligence, awareness, and depth. She subconsciously notices that you're attentive to her moods, responses, and personality. And that attentiveness makes her feel safe, validated, and emotionally connected. Personalization also fuels internal dialogue and mental rehearsal. She starts thinking about why you chose the nickname, what it reveals about how you see her, and how it reflects the dynamics between you. That internal processing deepens engagement because she becomes invested in decoding your perception of her. It's a subtle but persistent form of emotional tethering. Every mental replay strengthens the subconscious association between you and the feelings the nickname evokes, reinforcing desire and attachment without any overt effort from either side. Finally, emotional personalization leverages a fundamental principle of human connection. People are drawn to those who see them more clearly than they see themselves. When a nickname encapsulates her essence, her strengths, or her subtle traits in a way that resonates emotionally, you occupy a unique place in her psyche. That uniqueness, coupled with emotional relevance and attention, creates a magnetic pull. The nickname is no longer just a word. It becomes a signal of recognition, a cue for desire, and a trigger for obsession that continues to grow every time she recalls it, and automatically lowers emotional receptivity when something feels manufactured. Women are especially sensitive to subtle cues in speech, tone, and timing, and they can unconsciously tell when a man is trying too hard to impress or manipulate. A nickname that feels forced creates resistance rather than attraction. It signals insecurity, neediness, or overcompensation, and those signals deactivate emotional openness. On the other hand, a nickname that arises naturally from observation, context, or shared experience communicates effortless attention and confidence. That naturalness signals authenticity, and authenticity builds trust, intimacy, and desire simultaneously. When a nickname feels earned rather than imposed, it becomes emotionally sticky, something her mind and heart repeatedly return to. A natural nickname is deeply tied to the flow of interaction rather than isolated moments of forced creativity. When it emerges organically during a conversation, playful moment, or private joke, it becomes a marker of shared experience. That shared experience reinforces emotional bonding because humans encode memories of interaction more strongly when they occur within a context that feels genuine. She doesn't just hear the nickname, she remembers the laughter, the flirtation, the tone, and the circumstances surrounding it. Those memory pathways strengthen her subconscious connection to you, anchoring the nickname as an emotional cue she associates with closeness, chemistry, and exclusivity. The naturalness of a nickname also conveys confidence without arrogance. Men who force nicknames often over-explain, overemphasize, or repeat them unnecessarily, which creates tension, awkwardness, or skepticism. Women detect these microsignals instantly. A nickname that slips smoothly into conversation that feels aligned with your personality and energy communicates that you are comfortable with yourself and your influence. Confidence combined with naturalness amplifies magnetism because it signals abundance. You are emotionally secure enough to play, tease, and connect without needing to prove anything, and that emotional security becomes part of the magnetic pull that makes her respond. Natural nicknames also integrate into her perception of your relationship seamlessly. They feel like a private language, a rhythm shared between you that doesn't require conscious effort to enjoy. Because the nickname fits effortlessly, her mind doesn't categorize it as a manipulation tactic or a social experiment. Instead, she experiences it as a genuine reflection of connection. That perception enhances the emotional imprint because it bypasses the filters the brain usually erects against signals that feel calculated. When something feels genuine, it lodges in memory with emotional resonance rather than as a passing curiosity. Timing and context contribute to naturalness as well. A nickname is most effective when it appears spontaneously at the right moment. A playful tease, a subtle compliment, or a shared joke. Forced nicknames break flow. Natural nicknames enhance it. When delivered at the right moment, a nickname highlights her uniqueness, sparks attention, and creates micro moments of emotional intensity that reinforce attraction. Each of these moments becomes an anchor, and because the nickname appears naturally, she associates it with emotional authenticity, laughter, intimacy, and connection rather than obligation or routine. Naturalness also strengthens identity alignment. When a nickname emerges organically, it reflects her personality, quirks, or energy rather than imposing an external label. She internalizes it as an expression of her essence, and that personalization is more compelling because it validates her identity in a subtle, meaningful way. She begins to connect the feelings evoked by the nickname to her perception of you, creating a feedback loop where the nickname simultaneously affirms her identity and reinforces her emotional attachment. Finally, natural nicknames maintain curiosity and anticipation. Because they don't feel manufactured, she never knows exactly when or how you'll use them next, keeping her attention focused on you. She starts replaying past moments, thinking about why you chose that nickname and what it implies about her importance to you. That ongoing mental engagement strengthens her subconscious bond, making the nickname not just a word, but a trigger for desire, attention, and emotional obsession that grows with every interaction. In the end, nicknames aren't just playful words or cute labels. They are emotional triggers, subtle codes, and psychological anchors that shape how she perceives, feels, and responds to you. When chosen carefully, delivered naturally, timed with precision, and personalized with emotional insight, they bypass logic and go straight to her heart and subconscious. Each forbidden nickname, each tonal nuance, each moment of scarcity or exclusivity compounds attraction, creates anticipation, and fosters obsession. They work because they speak to something deeper than surface level interaction. They speak to identity, desire, and the human need to feel uniquely seen and valued. Mastering these elements gives you a tool that is effortless yet profound, playful yet powerful, subtle yet unforgettable. The nicknames themselves may be small, but the emotional imprint they leave is monumental, creating a connection that she not only remembers but craves, thinks about, and returns to again and again without even realizing why.